week on Motor Week, I'll be getting to grips with BMW's new M Coupe in Marbella. Jeremy Taylor is in Scotland with the Alfa Romeo Spider. Richard Hammond takes Suzuki's Jimny, not around town, but on a farm. And Royle drives the Audi S4. B, M and W. 3 letters that sum up the quality and performance you get from the pride of Bavaria. But of course, if it's real driving excitement you're after, then you'll be looking for an extra letter on the back of your BMW. It is, of course, the letter M, telling you that this BMW has come from the company's motorsport division. Now, it no longer just looks after their racing interests, but in recent years has found a new hobby, tweaking and tuning your average BM and turning them into supercars. First off the block for the ultimate in makeovers was the M3, hot on its heels the M5, one of the most extreme sports saloons ever. The third generation M5 out next summer promises absolutely blistering performance, with its 5-litre V8 developing an incredible 400 brake horsepower and catapulting the 5 from 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds. But as I said, that's next summer. Let's get back to the here and the now, because these are the keys to a rather special BMW that carries the letter M. Now, from certain angles, you may well think you've seen this car before. The flare of the wheel arches, the swell of the bonnet could lead you to believe that this is the M Roadster. But on closer inspection, you realise that this is in fact a very different beast. This is the M Coupe. The car to silence any of the critics who claim that the Roadster just wasn't butch enough. The M Coupe is packed with more testosterone than you'd get on a night out with the Chippendales. And personally, I think its curves and bulges are far sexier than anything those lads have to offer. This is the kind of car you can't ignore. Now, you may not be able to ignore it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll like it. But what you will do is have an opinion about it. It looks to me as though it's just escaped from a cartoon. The low-down, laid-back hot rod looks are pure Looney Tunes on acid. Yep, I reckon that BMW's design guru Chris Bangle had a fantastic time when he put pen to paper and came up with this one. And while they may have very different bodies, the interior is definitely that from the Roadster. Gorgeous two-tone upholstery that comes in some fantastic colours. Glorious curves that reflect onto the passenger side, and of course all the chrome and those little red needles that promise you hours of fun. Now, in the Coupe there is of course plenty more room in the back for all your bags than you'd find in the Roadster, but rather unsurprisingly the space inside the cabin is exactly the same. It's not fantastic, but I don't have a problem with it. What I do have a problem with is the fact that the steering wheel isn't adjustable. Now, you're paying £41,000 for this car. I'll find that very annoying. It's one of those things that when you live with it could become a huge irritation. But I still think it's gorgeous, and we haven't even got around to talking about the little letter M yet. And this is what you're paying the best part of 41 grand for. The tinkering and tweaking from the boys in the motorsport division will transform this car into a chariot of the gods. So let's talk for a minute about this 3.2 litre straight six that peaks at around 7,500 revs. Now, there's 321 brake horsepower packed in here that will get you from 0 to 60 in 4.9 seconds without even having to change up into third. There really is a seemingly never-ending thrust of power coming from this engine that sounds absolutely incredible and just seems to go on and on until you reach 155 miles per hour and the limiter kicks in and spoils all the fun. To keep up with old Looney Tunes, you better be behind the wheel of, at the very least, a 911. Behind the wheel, it smiles all round. The stiffness of the chassis brings such amazing levels of control that it's impossible not to be very impressed. Now, if you're a real driving fanatic, you might long for BMW's wonderful sequential manual gearbox in here to play around with, but I'm sorry to have to tell you that it just won't fit. You're going to have to make do instead with an excellent 5-speed manual, which is, I promise you, it's still loads of fun. Now, I suppose the question about the M Coupe is, does the price tag justify the driving experience? I reckon yes, it does. It really is a fantastic car, and for me the icing on the cake is its unusual looks. It does draw gasps, stares, waves everywhere that it goes. I just love it. In fact, I can only think of one downside to owning the M Coupe: the rather large amounts of money you'd spend on hiring out a test track, just so you can get the most out of the feeling you get when your foot hits that pedal.
Now, if these cars weren't sexy enough already, they've just been given a potent injection of the mechanical version of Viagra. There's a scorching new V6 3-litre engine in the GTV, and for this model, the Spider, they've tweaked and tuned the engine to give it even more power. Let's just give it a try. Just take a look at that. No, not that. This. Because they've given the Spider a little bit of a makeover. To start with, we've got new alloy wheels. There's kick plates under the door bearing the Alfa Romeo logo, and the front and rear bumpers are colour-coded. Even the Alfa Romeo badge at the front is now surrounded with chrome. It's bound to turn heads. If only there was somebody around to have a look. Now, the Italians certainly know a thing or two about designing cars, and that's not only the exterior, because the interior of this new Spider is just absolutely superb. There's a fantastic new control panel here in the centre, which houses the automatic climate control that is now standard across the range. It's really smart. There's a chrome finish to the centre dials. It all looks really, really flash. So what's the price of all this Italian exotica? Well, this one's a snip at just £80, but let's face it, you're not going to get very far. On the other hand, the Spider, £23,500, is a really smart car, but the one that the big boys really want is the GTV. We'll be doing a programme on this in the future, so watch out for it. As you can see, there's a whole range of colours to choose from, but me, well, I'm off inside for a wee dram. The Spider's hardtop sister car, the GTV, has now got a 3-litre V6 engine under the bonnet. And it's a shame Alfa Romeo couldn't fit the same engine into the Spider too, but it was considered not suitable for the UK market. However, both the Spider and the GTV get the same upgraded 2-litre twin-spark engine, with some changes similar to the one fitted in the award-winning 156. The result is a more powerful and flexible engine pumping out 155 brake horsepower. The 4-cylinder unit races to 60 miles per hour in 8.4 seconds and now has a top speed of 131 miles an hour. Around town it'll return around 21 miles per gallon, and if you really can resist the temptation to put your foot down, it's claimed it can top 40 miles per gallon in the extra urban cycle. The reason why you need to get the pizza in to celebrate, and why every Alfa Romeo Spider owner is celebrating, is because of what they put under the bonnet. This revised 2-litre unit has got more power, and it makes the Spider absolutely fly. It's fantastic fun.
Coming up after the break, Richard Hammond drives the Suzuki Jimny, and Ian Royle takes a look at the Audi S4.
Jimny. Jimny Cricket. Wasn't that the name of some squeaky voiced critter in a schmaltzy Walt Disney thing? I don't know. Anyway, in this context, Jimny is the name of Suzuki's little tiny off-roader, also a squeaky voiced wee critter. That's unfair, really. I mean, a 16-valve, 1.3-litre little engine is hardly likely to sound fruity and deep-chested, is it? At least it manages to chirp out about 79 bhp, which isn't bad, especially in a car weighing no more than a packet of fags. Trouble is, it's not much bigger than a packet of fags either. Small is definitely what it's about here. And once you've got over that, well, it's not too bad. Some people buy their 4x4s for the commanding driving position, others for the sheer bulk, the sheer presence of them. Well, when I say others, I mean men who were bullied at school and neurotic women who seem to confuse the school run with Vietnam. But this is not one of those 4x4s. This doesn't so much loom up menacingly behind in your rearview mirror when you're sat in traffic as it sneaks up, taps you on the shoulder and says, "Excuse me," in a squeaky little voice. It certainly isn't a frightening vehicle. In fact, if you were to look in your rearview mirror, you might just catch a view of the top of the head of the person driving it, and that's about it. Unless you're going to work on a go-kart, of course. Really, to get into this thing, you've got to be smiling before you even climb on board, smiling before you drive it, and the fact that it looks so friendly helps there. So does this. I learnt this trick in a car park yesterday. Watch. Boom! Unusually, I'm going to tell you the price of this car early on, and that's because I reckon it's essential when you're assessing it as a purchase. And the reason is all Suzuki Jimnys come as standard with power-assisted steering, electric front windows, electric door mirrors, twin airbags, side impact bars. In fact, there's hardly anything you can really buy and spend your money on to add on to this as an optional extra. And so the price for these things, well, that's the really good news. For the manual gearbox version, it's £9,995 on the road. And for this, the automatic, £10,870. Now that's super mini territory. So, comparing this with its competition, what can the Super Minis do that it can't? Well, you might say parking. In fact, it's a cinch in this. The turning circle is amazing. Driving is usually a good point in the Super Minis, just as it is in this. In fact, it's immense fun. Agreed, it does roll a little bit when it corners, and I can't say that I forgot entirely those disastrous toppling incidents of some of the earlier Suzuki Jeeps. But actually, they've sorted this so that the rear end will come round and it's far more likely to swap ends before ever it'll roll over, which I'm sure is a kind of comfort somewhere. Super Minis are also economical, of course. Well, you can expect this to return over 34 miles per gallon average. 1.3 16-valve, you'd expect it to be pretty good for that. So in fact, there's very little. Boot space, perfectly reasonable. It's small, but then it's a small car. And even car makers have to obey the laws of physics. Looking at it another way then, what can this do that the Super Minis can't? Well, I'll tell you. We've got a lever down here, and it can do this. We just changed into four-wheel drive. It's even got a low transfer box, so if the going gets really bumpy, your little Suzuki Jimny can keep going. Now you do that in a Super Mini? I don't think so. I don't imagine it's going to pose a real threat to Land Rovers, Land Cruisers and 4-tracks. But remember, Suzuki have been making mini leisure 4x4s now for 30 years, with the SJ, Samurai and Vitara to their name, so they should have got the hang of it by now. David Hull is a stable manager and uses a variety of vehicles in his day-to-day work.
Right, I'm the stable manager here. I do the day-to-day running of the yard, care of the horses. I usually use a quad bike for most of my daily chores. I don't use anything as grand as this. But on the other hand, I quite often use a Range Rover towing a horse box to go to shows. It's not a bad little toy, really. It's not going to pull many huge loads, but it's not a bad little toy. Another good thing about this little baby, it's got plenty of leg room. I'm 6 foot and I've got plenty of stretchy room here.
Well, it might be a bit of a lightweight and it might have somewhat excessive noise at motorway speeds. But it feels well put together. Most of it's made from galvanised steel, so it should last forever anyway. If you're looking for a budget 4x4 for 10 grand, you might want to consider buying second-hand and getting something perhaps a little more substantial. But if you're in the market for a second car or just for a small car that's got ample room in the back, that looks a little bit different, and that also means come the winter snows, you certainly will not be stuck, then I'd say this has got to be on your list. I know it would be on mine.
For a long time, some would say perhaps too long, BMW's M3 has been the hot executive car. Very little has come close to the M3 in terms of performance or style and quality. The Subaru Impreza Turbo has been the new kid on the block, but of course it will always lack that built-in Germany badge. So if you wanted a super fast saloon, the M3 was always the one to go for. That is, until now. Let me introduce you to my new friend from Germany. This acquaintance of mine absolutely loves the Autobahn, where it will positively fly along. What it will make of the M6 crawl through Birmingham on a Friday night, goodness only knows. But this is the new Audi S4, a car with a serious pedigree. Now, right here under the bonnet is of course the heart of the action, a 2.7 litre 30 valve twin turbo V6 that produces 265 brake horsepower. Now, I first got a look at this engine in the new A6 Avant earlier this year. In that car, it was fast. In this, it is phenomenal. Yes, not one turbo, but two turbos, and Audi say that that eliminates any turbo lag. This gorgeous engine produces almost 100 brake horsepower per litre and superb torque delivery of 400 Newton meters. This deep front valance here optimizes aerodynamic stability and gets the air flowing through to cool the turbochargers and the brakes. The S4 gets some fairly discreet spoilers around the car to distinguish it from your standard A4, plus 17-inch unique alloys and a lowered and stiffened suspension, plus a couple of small S4 badges. Pull up against this car at the traffic lights and think you're up against a tarted up A4 and you'll be seriously embarrassed. What you really want to know is how the S4 drives and of course how fast it is. And believe me, you won't be disappointed. It's quite happy tootling around town at low revs, but find some open road, knock it down a gear or two, and this beast just takes off. The acceleration is tremendous. I've had a couple of people in the passenger seat there, and the look of amazement on their faces as you floor the throttle is marvellous.
Caravans, curse of the holiday motorist, chugging down the motorway usually two abreast, holding up a trail of motorists and lorry drivers alike. Well, maybe not in this case. Motoring journalist Mark Walton has teamed up with Chrysler Jeep to take on the speed record for towing a caravan. But how did this amazing record attempt come about? Brian Rees of Chrysler.
This crazy man called Mark Walton phoned us up and said, would we try and break the land speed record for towing a caravan? So we're going to have a damn good go at it. Got lovely weather for it today, and 126 miles an hour is the target. Doesn't sound that much, but it's got to be a normal caravan. Can't be any aerodynamic changes, and we can't take everything out. The caravan's got the cooker and the fridge in there still. 126 the target. We reckon we might get about 130 today with the Viperon, because it's one hell of a powerful car, and we've got good weather for it. So that's the plan.
And what sort of speed do you think you'll achieve?
Viper would normally do the best part of 180 miles an hour, but we put the caravan on the back and it's like a big parachute and air brake on the back almost. And we'll probably get stuck at about 130 today, I should think.
So let's meet our intrepid pilot. Mark, what are the major things you'll need to keep an eye on during the run?
The main thing is just basically no really strong crosswinds, because obviously we don't want the caravan sliding around. And not having any rain is another advantage, obviously. And there's actually a balloon floating around over there, which is giving us a lot of confidence as well, because balloons don't usually go up in windy weather either, so it's looking good.
So with the onboard radar transmitter set up, Mark heads out for the first run. How does the man from Abbey Caravans feel about their precious mobile home losing a trusty Volvo estate, which normally becomes a standard feature?
It's into unknown territory for us, and we were a little bit concerned at what the stability would be like. Yes, one must bear in mind that, I mean, we're not looking at advanced aerodynamics, because caravans are only legally allowed to be towed at 60 miles an hour.
Although not allowed to make major modifications to the car in the rules, the team will even try a new air filter in search of extra speed.
Well, it gets up to about 115, just like that. Yeah? Dead easy, no problem. And then all of a sudden it's counting the miles. And 116, 117. You start thinking, go on.
So drastic action is called for. Believing that heat build-up under the bonnet could be a source of some lost performance, the team try a few runs with the bonnet slightly open.
The record currently stands at 126.77, so we need 0.8, so we need 0.1 of a mile an hour faster. I mean, I think we're so close now, absolutely every millimetre of difference could get us 0.1.
The team sets out for one last run. If they don't succeed this time, they'll call the whole attempt off.
That actually felt like the best run. At the end, I just glanced down at the rev counter, and normally it's just about 5,100 RPM. And that time I just glanced down and I thought, blimey, that's about 5,200, 5,300, and it's just a tiny, tiny fraction. And the engine note was just ever so slightly higher. And I thought, well, if that's not it, then that's it, there we go. 1 mile an hour over.
So congratulations to the team. They've just proven how fast a caravan could go.
The Ford Focus has won the prestigious Car of the Year award for 1999. Now, this award is coveted by manufacturers because a panel of motoring journalists from around Europe judged the winners. This follows the incredible response from both press and public since the car's launch. So popular has the Focus been that the demand currently far outstrips the supply. Production was stepped up in France and in Spain, anticipating a rush of orders after the Birmingham NEC Motor Show. But customers ordering now still face a 2-month wait for their cars. Seat will offer a 12-year anti-corrosion warranty on the Arossa next year, thanks to a galvanised body shell. The company's baby also benefits from a wider front track and added safety features. These include a second-generation variable code immobiliser and the latest ISOFIX child seat mounting points. Land Rover are also updating the classic Defender. The old favourite will gain the TD5 engine from the Discovery, as well as ABS brakes and electronic traction control. The Range Rover will also get revised engines, aimed at increasing low-down torque, and also an improved traction control system. Next week on Motor Week, the first of 2 special programmes from Detroit at the International 1999 Motor Show. Will be the only programme bringing you extensive coverage of this event. That's on next week's show.